Over the last few months, the way I've been thinking about Ethereum has been changing. I used to think that the most important, the primary purpose of Ethereum was as a platform for credibly neutral, transparent, decentralized finance. And while I still believe that a new financial system, built on a foundation of ETH, will become the primary system at some point in the future, I'm becoming more and more convinced that the purpose of Ethereum is trustless compute and not trustless finance. Beginning with last week's episode, Strangewater 16 with 0x Toki, I began and will continue to be exploring, expanding, and wrestling with these ideas. The most rewarding part of creating this show has been the privilege of volleying these concepts back and forth with people much smarter than me. And so I hope that you will enjoy the journey as we figure this all out together. So, with that being said, let me introduce you to today's guest, twMatt, co-founder of Tapioca. Functionally, Tapioca is a simple borrow-lend stablecoin protocol. But what makes Tapioca special is that it is omni-chain. It does not call any one chain home base, rather, it is native to all chains. This conversation is packed with so much, so here are a few things to listen for in particular. How Layer 0 works, and how Tapioca leverages Layer 0 to be omni-chain. How Tapioca has customized the standard Layer 0 configuration, and how this customization allows Tapioca to augment on-chain protocols with off-chain computation. And if you're feeling really ambitious, make sure to keep ZK cryptography on your mind at all times. In particular, think about how a snark can be used to validate arbitrary computation without having to actually run the computation directly. One more thing before we begin. Please do not take financial advice from this or any podcast. Ethereum will change the world one day, but you can easily lose all of your money between now and then. All right, enough with the introduction. Let's bring on Matt. Matt, thank you so much for joining me on the Strangewater podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Man, no, I'm super excited for this conversation because I think that, what attracts me to Tapioca is this alignment with a lot of the new crypto thesis that I have in my head. So super excited to get really deep into it. But I'm a huge believer in the builders behind the projects, and the really only thing that matters is the people and the stories that brought us here. So with that in mind, Matt, would you just kind of introduce yourself and tell us what brought you to Ethereum and and outside the financial system?
No, yeah, I mean, a great way to start this off. And I feel like I don't get a chance enough to bring this up, so I like going back a little bit. But yeah, no. So for people who don't know me, I'm Matt. I'm a co-founder of Tapioca, and basically, to kind of go in my history of how I kind of ended up in this crazy place. Basically, I was a product manager in a lot of gambling technology back 2015 to 2017. Yeah, the company sold off, and I was actually integrating crypto into the tech stack.
And so, sorry to interrupt, but when we're talking gambling, are we talking I remember I think that was the FanDuel time. Is it that kind of gambling, or is it casino style gambling? What are we talking about?
So specifically sportsbook, and iGaming. So the company I work for is called OpenBet. So it basically was an infrastructure where any gambling outfit, again mostly sportsbook gambling, and more gaming style stuff, they could use the tech stack to build whatever they want on top of it. So we didn't actually build the games. Other companies would build the games on top of our stack. So almost think Unity engine for games and regular video games. So like we were kind of like the Unity engine for like gambling type games, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
But yeah, no. So I mean, basically, I did that, for quite a few years there, and I was always super interested in crypto, DeFi, and just this, like I said, this kind of crazy space here. I mean, back then I was heavy into like bit shares, like Dan Larimer's old stuff, and all types of very wild and wacky experiments. And then, yeah, actually bringing us to Ethereum when the Ethereum ICO happened, and we started talking more about like smart contracts and things like that. That's when I got like super into everything, and I really saw that where this space could go. But I was still working full time and everything like that. So the company OpenBet sold in 2018, and that's when I kind of I took a step back. I was really heavy into researching it and just being involved at it and kind of like a third party um, you know kind of lurker type thing. And then yeah, when COVID hit and we were all kind of at home, that's what I spent like all of my time on, was just kind of involving myself in the Ethereum ecosystem, DeFi, everything. And yeah, I mean, basically when late 2021 was when I was like, I got what I think is a great idea. And I started meeting some developers, and I was like, let's do this. And then here I am.
Yeah, awesome. And so, like, it's like totally makes sense that you're at this gambling place. Like, gambling and crypto is like a very perfect fit just because of like, whatever. We don't need to talk about that, but like, it's one thing to like be there and integrating it and thinking about like, okay, how do we use this technology to achieve a goal, and another to like hear the call of the world computer, or I guess at that time of like Satoshi's vision, or just to be like hyperbolic about it, right? But like to hear the call and like to understand that like this is something like big and worth like dedicating a career to. And like I guess my two-part question is like, why did you feel like, what about you allowed you to hear the call, and number two, like when did that happen in this journey?
I think really what drew me to Ethereum was it, and just kind of like you said, like this, financial computer of the world, that we're all kind of collectively building. It really is just the fact of, I love the idea of a public ledger that is transparent, that we can hold each other accountable. Obviously, all of this started from banking collapses in 2008, and here we are, a decade later, kind of in the same boat. And I think and really it like crypto, obviously, like back when I was getting involved, was gambling. I mean, 2017, 2018, you had the ICO craze and everything like that. But I really did see more to it. Like I saw that there was a lot more that we could potentially do with this to make the world a better place, and really, just put, finance, I think, is kind of like the base layer of like society. And I think putting that onto a public, transparent ledger is a really powerful concept. And I think we've already started moving way past just, degenerate gambling. And we're finally now seeing some fruits of building things that are a lot bigger than us. Like, just to name a few, like Lens and, just, all these, base layer applications like Uniswap, Aave. There's a lot, we really have built like an alternative financial system, and just seeing it mature is incredible in of itself.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to pick apart there, and a lot of it I think that we'll get to throughout this conversation. But just to cue off that insight that you had, finance is the base layer of society. Like I have come to that same conclusion in kind of like a different way, but like through, for another time we can talk about like the books and like the why like my views are like deeply rooted in like how I understand history, but like I too believe that like finance is like the base layer of society, and like particularly that is because that like what money is in 2023 and has been for hundreds of years now is like how we as a society represent like energy and like
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
and like it's how we coordinate like what's important and how we change the world, and like the despots who have control of it like really shape the world. And so yeah, I can go off on this thing. Like, I really believe that like money being like energy means like money has is like gravity, and like the more that it accumulates, the more it draws like more and more money, and like that's why I like having this like credibly neutral base layer that is like Ethereum is so powerful. But like you really need to be down the rabbit hole to even be like grappling with this conversation.
No, but I think it couldn't be more true though. And I mean, like, it's like, when you're like, if we zoom back to like a 2008, or even like right now what's going on, where people are putting their time and effort in to make money, US dollars or whatever country they live in, and then those dollars are held by banks that are collapsing or failing or misusing their money and everything like that. And it's not just theft of the person's dollars, it's a theft of their time and energy, like you just said. And why I think Ethereum really changes that, and this whole system we built is just because, again, like we both said, it's a credibly neutral, public ledger that's transparent, that we can all kind of look at one another and know that everything's an equal playing field, and what you put in is exactly what you should get out. Because we were able to audit that at any time. So I think it's a lot bigger than what anyone like. I think once you realize that, you realize the magnitude of what this can be, and I think that's when you get that spark of excitement to build on it.
Yeah, well, I think one of like the conclusions I've come to in having this podcast is, to be clear, I've only really been speaking with Westerners, but like the conclusion I've come to is that like that is such a first world and like American and probably like Western European privilege to just like have to realize the power of like credible neutrality and like uncensorability. And like we can talk about like the things that are going on in South America with like inflation, like especially Venezuela. We can talk about how like for like 60 years, in my opinion, and like I've actually been to Iran. Like, so in my opinion, like it just doesn't make sense the economic war we've been waging on them, and like the people there love us, and it's just like it's so stupid. And then like for me, like the like my fiance is Russian, and so like I have like her whole family still lives in Moscow, and so I've been experiencing like these like what it's like to be on the receiving end of sanctions, like as a civilian, for like whatever, a year and a half now. And so I think like in America we come to this from like tech and from like gambling or from like asset whatever. But I think one of like just the things that I try to do to stay humble is like to remember that like our grand realization, like that the world computer is the world computer, is kind of like table stakes for like most of the people on this planet.
Yeah, no, I mean, it couldn't be more true as far as it, definitely I'm coming at it from obviously from a Western perspective, but if you put, this concept into Zimbabwe or Cuba or, different places like that, now you have like actual revolutionary stuff that can honestly change the planet to be so much better. It's a really broad concept, but I think, like I said, the more people who kind of delve down this rabbit hole and see this, will then start to understand what this is all really about. And it's not about building stupid meme coins and stuff like that. There is a lot more to Ethereum than meets the eye, and the blockchain in general.
Yeah, and like we do have problems. Like the reality is like because of the economic incentives, like when people say like the majority of crypto is like scams and Ponzi's, like it's actually true.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And so I don't know what to say. I mean, like honestly, I'm like very sympathetic with like whatever the like current like democratical like administration is, that like this is like anarchy and like we really need to like figure out what's going on here because like man, like SBF, like the 3AC, like I mean even like Gemini and Genesis and like everything, man, it's a shit. Celsius.
Well, and touching on that, I actually just was having a discussion about this, funny enough, and someone was saying like to me, who it's always tough when people who aren't like inside the game and they'll meet me in real life and they'll go, "Oh, you're in crypto, like that's all scams and stuff," and they'll bring up those characters. And to me, I always kind of, and I may be wrong in this analysis, but nonetheless, I'll say it anyway. I think if you remove crypto out of the equation, an SBF or 3AC, they would have existed in the regular traditional finance world, and I think they would have been able to carry on a lot longer and hurt a lot more people because there's no way to like until they would be audited or something, like they could go on for infinity, honestly. Like, and I think the blockchain allowed us to stop those people to a certain degree, and call that off. But I think you're always going to have that, like in any financial system, you're always going to have scammers and you're always going to have bad people. And I definitely think it's true that a majority of crypto is scams and bad people, but I think there's enough good that you can't throw away at all just based off X, Y, or Z. Like I think there's enough good in it to not just kind of discount the whole thing, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, look, like my fundamental thesis of like Ethereum and like how I've like oriented my life around is that like it doesn't really matter if it's good or bad. It doesn't really matter if people think it's good or bad. Like Ethereum is inevitable. And like the thing that really just like cemented that in my head was like what happened with Russia when the war started. And like look, I have like Ukraine's the victim. Like, things are like the world's crazy. Like, but it's like civilians are not involved in any of this stuff, and just like to see the actual impact is like the people are like because Ethereum is an option, because Bitcoin's an option, people are going to opt into it, like both at the like individual level and at the government level when like they're cut off from the Western system or when they realize like the Western system isn't neutral at all. And so I think like it's inevitable and like I I'm here to like contribute to that and like shape that and
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's really true with like the Russia situation or anything. You do have to remember there's a lot more innocent people that did nothing to deserve any of this and that are suffering like the people are in Ukraine or vice versa. Maybe not as bad. I mean, it's not an Olympic race of who's doing worse, but I think it's nonetheless, everyone deserves the ability to have the ability to transact with one another. And, it's great that Ethereum is able to be there as a mechanism to allow those people to continue to transact, and still have some way of kind of being above board, so to speak, in a way to facilitate transactions with one another and families across the world and things like that.
yeah, I mean I look at it in two ways, right? Like the Russia story is like perfect for me in two ways. Like one is at the individual level, and like today I keep a major like a major portion of my net worth on chain, like specifically in mind like how crazy our country is and like that things could go really like bad and that like I wouldn't might need to flee the country and like could like walk away with like my net worth, with and on like a piece of paper in my pocket or whatever. And like that is informed by like what's happening in Russia right now and watching my like in-laws go through it. And I think like the other side too is like on the government side is like you Russia is like a like global pillar, or sorry, is a pillar of the global economy. You can't just like cut them out, you know? Like you can't just like wish away 100 million people and like they are gonna like look for alternatives. And so again, I just like I what I say all the time is like I really believe it's possible that like our government does something stupid like make like even like holding Ethereum illegal in the US. And like all I have to say to that is like I'll see you guys in Dubai or Singapore because like in 10 years I'm like 1 billion% sure they're gonna undo that mistake, but like much to the chagrin of the American people, much to like the detriment of the American people, and like man, I'm not I'm not falling for that.
Yeah, no, and you already see that happening to some degree with all the lawsuits that are going on and stuff like that. And I think it's a major problem that the United States hasn't allowed. Like it just kind of bewilders me that and I guess it doesn't at the same time, but at a political level that the United States doesn't see what this technology offers. It just creates some type of framework that is workable for the United States to participate in it, that you don't see all of like kind of crypto people just moving to those countries like Singapore or wherever, Dubai or whatever. It's just, but nonetheless, just one of those things.
Yeah. Anyway, well, that's the place of like all of this in the world. Let's bring it back to stuff that's actually like manageable or like, at least like affectable. But anyway, so like why don't you just like fast forward us through like COVID hits, like you've realized that like Ethereum has like really interesting stuff going on. Like take us from that moment to basically like the start of Tapioca, or I guess like where we are today. Like yeah, how do we get from here to there?
Yeah, no, and this is the good part of the story, I promise. So, um, basically, when obviously 2020 hits, euphoria hits on crypto, halfway through the year or whatever. And what we saw pretty quickly was, Ethereum gas fees get really high, things like that. BNB chain launches, a lot of retail users move from Ethereum to BNB chain to kind of still be able to transact. And since then, we've seen like more and more layer ones pop up, and then also like layer two scaling solutions. Optimistic rollups. Now there's like all the zero knowledge rollups that have popped up. So what I kind of fundamentally saw was, and everyone else did, was, number one, it's hard to move your money between these different networks. Number two, you're fractured anyway between all of these networks, and the problem has become worse and worse as far as now there's hundreds of chains. And also the other thing as well is the bridges that allowed us to move between those chains have all been exploited, hacked, are very slow, are costly, et cetera, et cetera. So basically, as we kind of went through that whole, exodus to BNB chain, then we saw these scaling solutions and different L1s pop up. That's when I got the fundamental idea for Tapioca, as far as, we need a way to kind of move from at a user level. I have kind of a thesis that users should be more interacting at an app level instead of a chain level, meaning like, you're just utilizing the assets that you have, and you don't even know if you're using Ethereum or what chain you're on. You're just interacting with your assets, and that really makes the UX a lot better for an end user, that they're not having to bridge, swap, deposit, and then bridge, swap, like all of these multiple functions, and also just having to interact with a wallet, which already has enough stop gaps for people to get involved. And I kind of looked at like, okay, well, what is the base kind of principle of what DeFi is? And that's generally gaining yield on assets. So that's where I kind of came up with the core fundamental idea that to move DeFi forward, what would be most appropriate would be a lend borrow market that is cross-chain compatible, and that can, people can transact with their assets on any chain and be able to gain yields on them. And that's basically where, like I said, where Tapioca kind of first blossomed. And yeah, and that's basically after that I met the guys at Layer Zero, and we started building on Layer Zero. We were one of the first protocols to do so, and yeah, and I've basically since then been championing, that we need to kind of, like I said, move users to more of an app level, an interaction, and also move things to composability that users don't need to, bridge around and have all these headaches of how to interact with their assets.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, again, I've come to like the same conclusion, but in a different angle, which is like I very, very much believe that Ethereum, again, like part of my inevitable Ethereum thesis is that it is just like the next stage of development of the internet, right? It's the property layer of the internet native property layer. And I think that like to the if you like can buy into that analogy, or even if you can't, like if you just understand how the internet works, it's like you and I right now are exchanging like literally billions of TPS packet or like UDP packets, like back and forth, and then like that is going through like all these different protocol layers with like SSL and then like like video like codecs and like all this stuff, but like how do we experience this? Like, I sent you a link and then I hit record and like now we're talking, and I really, really believe that like I say all these things twice. Like I really, really believe that Ethereum will be like HTTP one day. Where like, yeah, we'll like kind of like vaguely understand it as like ETH, these letters mean something and like they'll be there, but all of the stuff that like we're messing around with today, private keys, bridges, like layer zero, any of this stuff, like the whole point of technology is to abstract it away to create like experiences and magic for people.
Yeah, and to add on that too, a lot of people when they first find out Tapioca is cross chain, they start talking to me. They generally think like I'm gonna be a big supporter of a lot of the all L ones, and I'm actually not. But I think with scaling solutions with Ethereum like Optimism, Arbitrum, side chains, stuff like that. I think we're going to see more and more of them for more specialized things like you're talking about. Like, there's UDP, SSL, HTTP, like basically that blockchains would act like that. Like different kind of translation layers almost and different execution layers as far as different layer twos and things like that. And I think the only kind of real push forward we've seen to kind of abstracting all that stuff away is like Uniswap with their mobile application. Like a user just has their mobile app, it's a wallet, and they can swap between two assets, and that's it. It's a very simple use case to move things forward. But I think that's where things need to go, and not users figuring out what's layer zero and what's Axelar and what's Cosmos and what does this do and this do. I think it's really just like an application that sits in front of you, just like you sent that link to me. Like, Tapioca just being an application, there's, any asset that you have in your wallet, there's the yields you can get on it, that's it. And there's no, all these kind of minutiae involved as far as like, bridging or swapping between two different assets or, needing to move between multiple wallets or something like that. And I still think we got a lot of things to go there, especially in like account abstraction and just making the wallet UX better and things like that. But I think we're slowly but surely getting there to abstracting all of this stuff away and just having an app, just like from the App Store, that the user opens up and then they can immediately use it without, going through all this other stuff.
Yeah. So I guess just to put this bluntly, right? Like my I think like what it basically comes down to for me is like understanding why tapioca is like this vision can happen is like you have to have this like unshakable faith that layer zero is providing this infrastructure that allows you to like credibly call yourself existing like between chains or like chain agnostic or however you phrase it. So can you talk a little bit about like one, if you take issue with any way I just phrased that, but two, like before we like really talk about like the interesting things that are going on at the application layer, like why I think everyone who is like heard from me or is listening to this podcast can agree that like it makes sense to build on Ethereum. That's the credibly neutral thing. That's why we're here. But like why does layer zero move like if not up to that level, like right below it for you?
So why I totally agree with what you just said, and the reason why is I think the problem with bridges in general is just the fact that they're shared security models where everyone's kind of building on the same, the same monolithic security, and that security is generally really weak. And you're like we just saw with the multi-chain hack, or even if we go back to like Wormhole or Nomad or any of those, they all kind of were exploited in the same regard. And why I got so excited with Layer Zero and why we set out to build this was that Layer Zero is a lot more like Ethereum in that we can define our own. Everything's isolated to the app level, so it's just kind of like the app defines its security model, it defines its configuration. Everything is customizable, just like smart contracts are on Ethereum. So it makes Layer Zero a lot more just like a simple generalized messaging infrastructure than being like a this monolithic provider that you need to build atop to offer these different functionalities, usually at the cost of centralization and obviously security issues. So I mean the great thing is even at the infrastructure level of like node providers and things like that, we're able to isolate it completely to Tapioca and basically use nothing of Layer Zeros besides like their endpoints, which are kind of like mailboxes on each chain. And the great thing with Layer Zero is those are immutable. So basically, we don't have to worry about like those being modified or changed or anything like that. So I think it gets pretty damn close to being a fully immutable way to send messages between these different blockchains and scaling solutions, and really offer users at the app level a way to just transact without even knowing what chain they're using.
So is the idea here that not necessarily that you are eliminating all of the risks associated with bridging, like at a certain level, right? Like there has to be pooled USDC that is like the collateral that people deposited on some chain somewhere that like could be a honeypot, right? But like the idea is that like because of how layer zero works, you're able to like internalize that and configure it to like tapioca standards, and therefore like basically layer zero is just providing like templates for you.
So pretty close. So basically, Layer Zero doesn't pool anything. How it actually works is there's a there's it's basically like a two-party consent config. So basically, how it works is, if say you want to send a message from Ethereum to like Optimism, what actually happens is the user sends a message to their endpoint, which is immutable, and that message is picked up by a relayer, which Layer Zero allows for you to build your own relayers. Like we have Pearl Layer, and then there's the default Layer Zero relayer. So that relayer pulls it, generates a proof, and then that proof is basically matched up to an oracle's proof, which you can use any oracle you want. With us, we use Chainlink. So basically, that proof that our relayer generates has to be matched by Chainlink's proof, and then once those two proofs are confirmed, basically then the message is executed, and then the on-chain, whatever the on-chain operation is actually executed. So by that kind of configuration, For something to basically go wrong or an exploit to occur or something like that, what would have to occur is a relayer our relayer would have to generate a fraudulent proof, and then the oracle, and again in our case Chainlink, would have to confirm fraudulent that fraudulent proof. So in that case being a block header. So basically, that allows for a lot of security, and that it's very tough to, obviously have two parties agree on something that's fraudulent, kind of like, how Ethereum's consensus is derived, or anything else. And basically, the other thing as well that Layer Zero does that's really cool is it's called pre-crime. And what basically it does is it runs that message on a local blockchain off chain. And if that message operation results in breaking any of our rules, like, you can't take more liquidity out than you put in, or different rules like that, then the message will fail out, even if the oracle and relayer confirm it. So there's a lot more modularity, customizability, and more a better security model than, like, oh, here's our multi-sig, and we have a relayer that, it's just a one-party consent, and then, whoops, multi-chain, we lost the private keys. Now anybody can do whatever they want, with that two-party consent configuration. So
Yeah, so okay, let me try to sum this up and tell me if I've got this. But so the idea with layer zero is that they're providing like really, like, if you want to use layer zero bare bones, all they're providing is like endpoints on every single chain, or at least their supported chains or whatever. And like what these endpoints do, like, is they confirm that the proof from Chainlink, and when we say proof from Chainlink, what we're saying is the like we're just confirming the block, like, and the Ethereum block header, right? Like, yeah, okay. We're confirming the block header from Chainlink with the block header that came from the trusted relayer. And we need to confirm this block header because in that block is an instruction that needs to be replicated on the destination chain. Is that right so far? Okay. And so, like, out of the box, you have the option to use the layer zero, like, centralized, trusted, like, relay network, which, like, could just be one node on AWS, or they could set it up like a blockchain, and, like, hint, hint, that's probably where, like, the layer zero token is going to come into play. Is that right?
yeah, yeah. And just to point out one thing real quick too, so if people know of like the L2 Beats article where they were like, layer zero isolated security is no security. What they were pointing out is that every layer zero application right now uses the default configuration. So it's defaulting to layer zero's relayer and layer zero's oracle. So in that case, it's two parties, but both parties are owned by the same entity. And that's where you have a centralization question with it, because of course it's a 3 of 5 multi-sig. I believe, I may be wrong on the size, but it's a multi-sig that layer zero controls on their relayer and on their oracle. And that's why L2 Beats was pointing out, like, this is hyper centralized, and this could be knocked down at any second, because it's just, two multi-sigs with the same people that are agreeing on the same thing. And that's why Tapioca is actually the first protocol that's not using the layer zero relayer, and that's not using the layer zero oracle, and we're not using the default configuration. Um, so that'll kind of be the first time layer zero is being shown of what it actually can do, as far as isolating all this stuff down, allowing applications to customize it and change it, and maximize the decentralization as far as you can anyway, to perform like something as complex as messaging between two blockchains that don't normally know how to talk to one another.
Got it. And so obviously, like, the reason that everyone except for Tapioca is configured like the default way is because, like, to make both, each change incurs a new cost, right? Like I'm sure you guys, I don't know if you can disclose this or not. I forget how like Chainlink works, but like I'm sure you guys are paying in some way Chainlink to access that header data. And then on the other side, like if you're running your own nodes, like that's like, I mean, I run Ethereum nodes, like it's a real cost, whether like you're running physical computers or cloud servers or whatever. And so, yeah, what you're saying is that Tapioca is making the like expensive but like forward thinking choice to say that like we just like want to use the endpoints, and like we could probably be like decentralized and safe by just changing one of those things, like just the Chainlink Oracle or just the node network, but like we're going maxi on this. And by the way, hint hint, like if there's room for a network, that sounds like room for a token.
Yeah. So basically, you're dead on that. You could just change the Oracle, and then you could say, okay, these are now two totally different parties, and you could make an argument that that's decentralized, and I'd probably agree with you. Also, you can immutably set the messaging libraries that are used. So like even and all of the messaging libraries are perpetual. So that if you define them, then they'll be in service forever, and then you can just have them forever, and that's what we did. So we went like full on, to do this like at the scale it should be done, as far as basically, how I think layer zero look at it as is smaller applications that don't want to go through all of that, because you are right, it's costly, like our AWS and then our Google Cloud stuff, it's all expensive, of course, and then paying Chainlink, is expensive too. So smaller applications could actually piggyback off of our relayer, and bigger applications like us can define our own. So it allows for that scale of, like, if you're just a smaller application and you want to use this type of functionality, you could just point to the default configure hours, and then for bigger stuff, you can do what we're doing, where we're going full custom, full purist on trying to get as far decentralized as you can.
Yeah, and by being the first relayer network, like if you guys release a token, then you can like tell new projects like, hey, instead of paying layer zero their LZO token to do their relay network, you can pay in TAP tokens. But you don't have to answer that.
Yeah, no, I mean there's something there. Yeah, I've already hinted a few places. Yeah, that we will be allowing other protocols to use our relayer in Oracle, and there will maybe be a fee structure that uses our token. But yeah.
Cool. And so like final thing, and then we can kind of move up to the application layer. But do like like when you send USDC to, let's say, like the Ethereum layer zero endpoint, is that USDC pooled with like Stargate's USDC with all USDC, or like I'm wondering, is I call this like the Sam Kazemian the method of like uncensorability, but like I'm wondering just like how your exposure to centralized assets is like mitigated through this construction.
Yeah, so this is really big, as far as this is why we built a stable coin. We have USDO, which is Omnichain USD. And what's special about it, besides it being a pure decentralized stablecoin that's only backed with gas tokens and liquid staking derivatives, no USDC backing or anything like that, is it is a native OFT, which is an omni-chain fungible token. And that super standard allows people to teleport USDO chain to chain with no fee, instantaneously. So you could say, okay, I want my USDO that's on Arbitrum, I want to put it on Ethereum. That basically, it'll burn on Arbitrum, and that the proof of the burn will be grabbed by the relayer in the Oracle. And once that proof has been taken, that the tokens have been burned, then basically the relayer tells the endpoint, which tells the relayer on Ethereum, to mint the applicable amount of USDO on that chain. So it basically allows for a lot of composability, that we have our own relayer and Oracle setup, and we're able to have a truly decentralized stablecoin that also can act as a base layer of value in that it's a stable coin that can, mint and burn to any chain, and you don't have to use any bridges whatsoever to do it. Stargate works differently in that there is a pool of USDC on like Ethereum and Arbitrum, and then basically when you do it, when you transfer using Stargate, you deposit your USDC into the pool on Arbitrum, and then it basically unlocks the respective amount of USDC on Ethereum to then be withdrawn by your wallet. So that does incur, like, you have pools on both sides, like a normal bidirectional bridge would have. And that's basically what we're trying to abstract away from with Tapioca, is that all of our assets are OFTs, so that we're able to have that mint and burn functionality with all of them.
Yeah, so okay. So okay, yeah, man, like I wish we had like 6 episodes, or maybe we can do 6 episodes. But okay, so first, like let's like really pick apart why you can like mint and burn what's it called? Sorry, what is it called?
USDO.
USDO. Yeah, but it's like a zero, right? It's not a O.
So we did that at first, that we did USD zero, but then we dropped it for an O, just because it gets a little annoying on like Twitter and stuff like that. You can't have a number in the cash tag, so we just dropped it. We did
Yeah.
USDO.
Never
Yeah.
forget all you finance bros and computer science nerds that like branding is important. So anyway,
Yes, yes, it
USDO.
is.
So like let's like the reason that you can basically mint and burn, sorry, the reason that you can transfer it instantly and for free is like because it all this like computation and checking is happening through your relay network, right? And like you are like picking up the bill and like probably in perpetuity for like your homemade applications, like you will pick up the bill and like and then the computation can be super fast because like you don't need to be as like decentralized and as just like methodical and like accessible to Raspberry Pis or whatever as Ethereum. And so like first of all, like the reason why this is happening essentially is because you are offloading like all the computation into like basically this new like Tapioca computational network that is using like layer zero just as templates or piping or whatever.
Yeah, and I mean that's basically 100% accurate. Now we will allow for anyone to operate a node on and be an infrastructure provider on our network, and that's going to have on our not on our network per se, but our relayer network. I always like to say that because then people think we're building like an L1 or something, but so anyone could jump in on that. But basically, with the mint and burn, how it works specifically on the fee side of things, again, not that there is one, but basically gas cost wise, what actually happens is when you pay for the gas to do it, from, let's say again, Arbitrum to Ethereum. What actually happens is you pay gas on both sides up front on Arbitrum, and basically your gas will be airdropped to Ethereum. So basically, again, if you're going that direction, you pay your gas on Arbitrum, the relayer grabs the gas, brings it to Ethereum, and then pays it on that side as well. So that's the only thing that you're basically paying is just normal gas on both networks. But it is both networks. It's not just Arbitrum. But yeah, and then basically a mint and burn in actual time to confirm it and everything like that we've tested. It's about 20 seconds total. So it's pretty, basically block time of both the networks combined, and you're all done. You're right there.
Yeah, 20 to 30 seconds is essentially double Ethereum's block time. So
Yeah,
there we
exactly,
go. Fun
exactly.
fact. Ethereum's always going to be the slow one. Like fun fact. But anyway,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
so okay. As I mentioned before we started recording, like I think that the like DeFi part of this is the least interesting. So like I'm gonna ask this question and like just why don't you give like the like the official answer and then like let's get back to the computation. But so it sounds like this whole thing is basically premised on the idea that like you can put your native tokens or like your LSDs, which we're treating like native tokens, You can put it on each like source chain and then mint USDO on a destination chain. And like the big like what if there, or like the big like important piece there is that you need to be able to like sell your USDO or maybe use it for more borrowing and lending or something. But USDO needs to be supported and integrated and have like deep liquidity on like really every destination chain. So like, how do you think about that? What's the strategy for that?
Yeah, so that gets into a long can of worms, but basically, we threw out the entire incentive model of a common DeFi protocol with like liquidity mining, pool two stuff. What we've done is we've created an incentive structure that we call DSO or DAO share options. What that does is basically it's call option incentives. And why we went for call options is because every time they're redeemed, we create liquidity from that redemption. And then that liquidity is protocol owned liquidity or POL. And then basically we can deploy that POL into being permanent LP for USDO on any chain we want. So that allows us to really build up a lot of liquidity on all of these chains so that we can facilitate really seamless trading of USDO on all of these, many, many different networks.
So the idea is basically build up POL so that you can project it onto like the networks that you know that your users care about, and then a combination of that plus like strategic assets like you you didn't say this. I don't know if this is true. This is a question like CRV and CVX and like those kinds of assets.
So we're primarily targeting UniV3 with Arrakis. But it's something probably we'll look at as we grow and everything like that of going for curve and everything like that. But basically, one of my theses was with curve was just that the fact that we get a lot better swap execution on UniV3. We get a lot more for our dollar with LP, just because when you're doing dollar pegged concentrated uni v3 positions, it's basically like taking out a ton of leverage on the peg. So if we put down $1 million in LP on uni v3 that's pegged at a dollar, we can facilitate really large trades versus with curve. We have like if we have you could move the A factor up really high and everything like that, and it sort of goes to the same concept, but Uni v3 allows you to really go balls to the walls on it and really push the utilization of the liquidity really high. Just because we're looking at supporting dozens of networks, so we really need to have the ability to facilitate trades, as you're pointing out on all these different chains, and even big ones and things like that. So
Yeah, man, I totally hear you, and I think that like one of like the interesting insights about doing what you're doing is that like you always know how much USDO is going to be minted on each chain, and therefore like you know exactly how much liquidity you need to provide, and so like you can be really aggressive with leverage because you like can basically say like, okay, we know we're super leveraged, we know if we go off peg, then like immediately we're going to be wiped out, but we're just going to make sure there's enough liquidity based on like the amount of outstanding USDO that like we can't get wiped out.
exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So again, I like the reason that I'm so like interested in like in what Tapioca is building and like living between chains and stuff is because like I really I the thesis that like I am developing and like becoming more and more convinced of is that like we understand the NFT craze as like something that was like pretty crazy. And like yes, like CryptoPunks will probably have staying power, like maybe even Bored Apes and like NFT technology like matters for sure. But like the things that we saw, like I think we can all recognize that like great for gambling, like it'll come in future waves, but like it wasn't like what crypto is for, you know? And I I am like becoming more and more convinced that like the DeFi that we like know and love today is like the same thing. It's just like the same thing for us like finance bros instead of for like the art bros or the internet bros or whatever, right? And like I think like look like my background, I came from, I used to do corporate finance for Anheuser-Busch. Like I was in charge of like $20 billion a year. It was like my job to just like get money from like our bank accounts in New York to our bank accounts in Belgium to Brazil. Like that was just my job. And like a huge reason that I believe in Ethereum is just because like you ever tried wiring $1 billion? Like it sucks, man. Like, it doesn't work, and like Ethereum is just better, like Uniswap, like I believe in, right? Aave, like I believe in, but I believe in them as like technology primitives that like I fully expect JP Morgan to like fork and then like put all of like the Western capital of the world in their own proprietary version, and like the things that we know and love today like might be swept aside. And so I yeah, and so like I like am becoming more and more convinced that like to be focused on like the things that were really exciting last year as like where the energy is going to be in the next bull cycle, like just once the money's ready, is just like is like a misunderstanding of like what Ethereum's for, And so like which brings me to like my thesis, and like what I think you've already like inherently understood is that like Ethereum is about like computation, and it's about like providing this credibly neutral platform that like gives us the ability to express like identity and like immutability and like transparency and like all this like stuff. But like what we're going to figure out is like how to project more and more computation into like the extremely limited EVM. And so like I think that's exactly like what layer zero allows, and like that's exactly what you're doing with both like the Tapioca application, but more specifically the Tapioca relay network. And so I'll pause there, take a breath, and like just do you have any thoughts or any response to all that?
No, yeah, I mean, I was gonna say basically, I think when people say like, oh, we have all these DeFi primitives and they'll never go anywhere, it's so patently absurd. Like, it's such an immature space, and we're still kind of learning to walk, so to speak. And Ethereum at the development level is all about experimentation and pushing things forward, and I think we saw a little bit of it as we went through 2020 to now, but I still think we're at like the really fledgling beginning of it, that there's no like moat of anything right now. There's popular applications that people use right now, but they could change in a month. Like people could release something that is 100 times better that people adopt, or like you were saying, like a JP Morgan could make a Uniswap competitor and have instant adoption tomorrow. It at the end of the day, though, it's all anything that brings more people to the Ethereum playground, so to speak, is great to me. I mean, I think the whole point of being a developer is to get more people to adopt the concept of what this space is and get involved in it. And I think that's something that crypto has succeeded at. Is if you look at it from like a user conversion ratio of like someone touching crypto for the first time, do they continue using it? I think a lot of people become really passionate, people that stay around long term. And it's just really about finding more and more of those people and onboarding more and more of the world into Ethereum. And I think that's already slowly happening, as the days go on, that we're finding more and more adoption. But we're still at the beginning.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, with every like good builder that comes in, we also get like more Doquans and SBFs, and like it is what it is. But like again, focusing on like this idea of like what's next is about computation, like Tapioca, like what you're doing is like taking the primitives that we learned from last cycle, right? Like borrowing and lending, and stable coins, essentially, right? And I guess Uniswap v3, like you're that's like a core part of your strategy, right? And But like when I hear about what you're building, and now after speaking with you for, almost an hour, like really understanding how you're building it, like the real product here is the relay network. And like I think like what you'll find is that like yes, as like you bootstrap users and TVL and like interest through, just like the primitives that we are all comfortable with today. I think you'll find more and more that like what's interesting is like the ability of this like relay network to like reach in and out of these like, everything from like the perfect pristine like trustless EVM into other environments and like, project like much more complicated stuff. And I think like earlier you made a comment like we're not like trying to create an L1, but like, the more I think about it, like the more it's like we shouldn't like the Ethereum is the backbone. Like Ethereum is the pristine, like the perfect, like nobody can like fuck with it. Like that's the point of it. But like everything after that, like I just like what's the distinction between like an L1 and a like relay network, especially if you like consider like money and like information to be like analogous, just like E equals MC squared,
Yeah, no, there's definitely a strong similarity in how the models are, and also the longer we built Tapioca, the more I've kind of put a lot more importance on, the stablecoin side of things. As far as I think it's really important to have like that 2019 DAI that is a true like decentralized medium of exchange. I definitely think Ethereum works as that as well, of course, but just basically saying, for people, people still want dollar denominated assets to a certain degree, like a stable dollar denominated asset. And one of the things I really hate is all the people that are trying to push DeFi more into like a C DeFi type thing where it's like, oh, let's bring T bills on chain and let's, do this and this. Like, I really, like, one of the things with Tapioca is kind of saying no to that and pushing things back to being more on the decentralized side of things, and more along the core tenets of what DeFi is supposed to be as far as a decentralized financial layer. And I think that's important in of itself. But I definitely agree the relayer side of things will unlock a lot of potential value in moving between all these chains as we see more and more, especially layer twos. I'm really excited about all the new layer two scaling solutions that are coming out, and and just being able to transact between them easily, I think is extremely important. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think like I don't ever want to like tell you like you shouldn't be thinking about like the things you're building today, and like I'm not here to tell you that like the stablecoin is going to become irrelevant. Like if anything, I think you'll find like as the and again I'm just talking out of my ass here. What do I know? But you'll find like as the stablecoin like grows and you have like more and more like TVL on all these different chains, like your customers will be saying like, okay, like it's cool that I can just like take out the USDC on this chain, but like why don't you like build a product for me that like automatically invests it? And then the question's going to become like why why do it within the EVM, which is like incredibly expensive and slow and like all of these things, when you can do it in this relay network?
Well, I will say we already got that. We already do got that. We have Bento Box V2 we built, which what it does is basically apply USDO or actually other assets as well to omni-chain yield strategy. So basically, your liquidity can be active and utilized on multiple chains simultaneously. So that is one of our core products I'm really excited about as well.
No, yeah, and again, like again, building on like the primitives that came out of DeFi, like that's perfect. But like, I think the next iteration of that is like for example, like why did we not see like perps on chain until Arbitrum? And even then, they're like a little bit janky. It's just because like the computation was like too crazy to do in Ethereum, and so I just and like the secret magic sauce that like kind of ties this whole together and makes me like so confident that like the relay network is going to be like your big product is ZK cryptography. because like what ZK cryptography allows us to do is like do all this incredibly intense computation off chain and then like push it on chain and then confirm that like it was like legitimate and like and fair and good and like all of our like conceptions of like centralization go out the window when like you're running stuff on AWS but you can confirm that it was done fairly on chain. And so like that's the future that I'm excited about.
Yeah, I totally agree on that side. I think there's a lot of like ZK at a like as far as like a ZK sync or like a Polygon ZK EVM. I'm not as excited about, but like stuff like Scroll or I think even like Railgun uses ZK as well. I may be wrong on that, but I think there's a lot of use cases for zero knowledge proofs as far as like you're saying, like taking specific things to validate off-chain interactions in different regards. I think is going to be an extremely big sector. So
Yeah, no, for sure. And again, I think just to kind of like close this up and wrap it in a bow, I mean, I think like what's so like spot on about what you're doing with Tapioca is like the realization that um, like Ethereum is like home base and what we all believe in, and like no one is giving up on Ethereum, but like as part of being acolytes of Ethereum, it's the recognition that like we don't stop with HTTP. We build layers on top of it so that like we get to a point where like it's just a part of daily life and it's not like technology anymore. Like our phones aren't really even technology anymore. They're like almost appendages, right?
yeah, I mean, it's definitely 1,000%. I think the future that Ethereum becomes the settlement layer of the world, and there's all of these execution layers on top of it, and even beyond that, to do more and more hyper specialized things that they all still settle on, the like you said, the home base of Ethereum, and I think that's 100% the future.
Yeah. And I think like the real galaxy brain take is like we think of settlement as like financial and about like capital and money, right? But like in this, like post-internet world in 2020 and beyond, like information really is capital. And so like Ethereum being the settlement layer of the internet or of humanity or whatever is like also about like the settlement layer of information and like of truth and like man like deep fakes and AI and like all this stuff, man, like Ethereum is inevitable.
Yep, I totally agree. Great way to cap this one off, I think.
So before I let you go away, can you please just like let the audience know like where they can find you, where they can find Tapioca, and like if they're interested in getting involved, like what do they do?
Yeah, no. So if you listen to this, much love. Definitely, check if you want to come give me a holler or follow us. I am at twMatt with three T's on Twitter. Tapioca is at tapioca_DAO. Website's tapioca.xyz. And yeah, we got a Discord that's a lot of fun that you should totally join up. We also have a podcast, Tap Talk, that you can check out. It's more DeFi focused, but a lot of fun there, a lot of joking around and whatnot. So you can always chat with us there as well. But yeah, no, it was awesome. It was awesome to come on here and talk Ethereum.
Yeah, awesome, man. Well, yeah, I've always been Ethereum focused, but like my whole center has been in DeFi, so I've only been on this like computation kick for 2 episodes. So I appreciate you coming on this journey, and man, this is a special conversation. Thank you so much, Matt.
Absolutely, likewise. Much love, everybody.